Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our amazing special guest tonight. Felicia joins us from Sneak, where she is an associate software engineer. She started her technical training by attending a boot camp. She decided to switch from economics to software, and who can blame her? And she currently works mostly on back-end applications at Sneak, which is a fairly large startup. So welcome, Felicia.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. It is an absolute pleasure. So we will just get started with a couple of questions to set the scene. If you could give us a very quick explanation of your journey into tech and how you got here.
Cool. I'll try to make it quick. So if I'm rambling, please just interrupt me.
No problem. We love a good story.
But like you said, I was doing economics. I was studying it at university whilst simultaneously working for a big corporation. I'd gotten a job there after doing an internship, and I was in my third year of university. I started late. I started about 5 or so years after most people usually do. I just really wasn't enjoying it. All my books were kind of from the 60s, and, there was this Brexit had just happened. It was a really interesting time economically speaking, and that did not translate into the classroom. At the same time, my grandmother passed away, and I was just really, really evaluating, thinking, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not happy. This job is interesting to a certain extent, but everybody is kind of just really corporate. They get in before the manager arrives, they leave after the manager leaves, long hours, I felt like I was just kind of making this massive company rich and not really doing anything of value. At least that's how I felt.
Sure.
So I left. I did not have a backup plan. I was working like 2 jobs to kind of like make ends meet. And then I walked past a intro to coding session. Google had done like a pop-up on my local high street. And so I went in, clearly had nothing to do that day. I just went inside and asked about it, and they told me to join. And it was really small. We were basically just building this mini application out of scratch. I don't know if any of you guys know, it's basically just a coding puzzle kind of language for young children. But I loved it. I loved every single second of it. And nice. I kept asking them for more and more and more. And eventually I think the guy just got fed up with me and was like, look, I've got nothing left for you. Maybe you should retrain. So I joined bootcamp. It was a 12-week full stack bootcamp for Node.js. And I, again, loved every second of it. It was very hard. I was also still continuing those 2 jobs to fund myself through it. And then I graduated and was very lucky to be given a job offer by the bootcamp itself. They asked me to stay on to help them teach. So I did that for a few months and COVID hit. So I was furloughed. And during that furlough, I kind of just was building projects and keeping up my learning, and realized that I got into this to build and to be creative. And whilst I really loved teaching, it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I applied for a new job, and here we are 5 months later.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And, sometimes life happens to you. So here you are, but it's gone well, thankfully.
Yes.
Silver linings. Great stuff. Thank you very much. So we're here to talk today about back-end engineering. For those folks who are fairly new, could you tell us what encompasses the back end of an application?
Sure. So backend is dealing with kind of servers, APIs, all the things that the front end kind of needs to talk to make it work. So my job mostly encompasses, as I said, building endpoints, doing a lot of testing. Yeah. I will talk about that, I think, a bit later about what my job actually involves. But yeah, that kind of stuff.
Well, great. Well, let's go into it right now. What does your job involve?
So like you said before, I work at a startup. So I think I need to caveat with that, because startups kind of, you have your hands in a little bit of everything. So whilst it's mostly back end, and like I said, I work a lot with the APIs and testing and building stuff out, I do some front end. So I do a bit of our tech stack is Vue on the front end.
Yeah.
On the back end is Express. And so I do a little bit of that. I'd say maybe about 15% of my time is spent in the front end and Cypress testing, and a little bit of DevOps as well. So it's kind of all encompassing, but it is mostly back end.
I think it's really, really interesting, and we'll talk a little bit later about what people think that role does encompass and how it can be different across companies. But before we get there, I wanted to ask about the tools that you currently use at work.
Cool. Yes. So as in frameworks, or literally like the tools on my...
I guess any of it. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All of it.
Like I said,
any that you're allowed to say.
Yes. The frameworks that I work on in my day-to-day on the back end is Express. And as I said, Node is a Node app. And then on the front end, we use Vue and Cypress. We do a lot of work with Kubernetes as well. Everything is on GitHub. I believe my IDE is WebStorm. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but if you've never used it and you're just learning how to code, I definitely recommend it more so than VS Code, because there are a lot of little bits in there that kind of help you along whilst you're coding. Yeah, agreed. We've probably broken some hearts with that statement, but it's okay. I'm sorry.
I am also a WebStormy person, but because I'm used to that ecosystem.
I literally I've been doing code this entire time, and then my latest ticket, I decided to move over to WebStorm because my manager couldn't stop going on about it, and my senior as well. And I'm definitely a convert. I recommend.
Nice, good. Awesome. Thank you very, very much. So let's backtrack to, you mentioned you do a little bit of work on the front end, and I do want to cover this because I think that it's not always clear with a role title what that role involves, and what that role could look like at different companies. So I wanted to ask, what do you think would distinguish your role versus a full stack role at another company where you're a lot more heavily involved in the front end?
Cool. So I'd say that when I was hired, I was never hired as a back-end engineer. I was advertised as a just general software engineer in a full stack position. But when during the interview process, I was asked what my preference was, and I did say backend. So I was put in a team that is mostly focused on backend, but we do some front end work. But you're right. I think because it's a startup, you kind of are expected to get your hands dirty a bit more, like be willing to jump into all aspects of development. Whereas potentially if it was like a corporation or something, I think they probably would be more distinguished between, okay, you're a back-end engineer, you're a front-end engineer, and full stack, I guess, would probably be maybe 50-50.
50-50. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think it's important to realize that role could look quite different in different places. Definitely. And so on that, saying if we all came to your company and we all interviewed for the same role, how much would we need to know about those front-end components? Where do you think the value in the skills actually do lie, even though you might have quite a wide range that you'd use at work?
For sure. I'd say that the best place to start would be to get to grips with the basics. So build, like, at least for me, I didn't come from having a specialist job, right? Like I was a complete newbie, and then my job in software was teaching. But I came with the background knowledge of, I know how to build an API. I know how to test an API. I know how to build the front end to that API with a React framework, for example. I think coming at any job with the foundational knowledge will allow you to learn all the extras kind of as you go, because you're not also having to go back to learn the basics.
Perfect. Yeah, and it follows really nicely onto my next one, which I wanted to discuss portfolio projects. So you said you know how to do all those things, and you probably partly know how to do them from your coursework and your learning. But how did you show that? What would you say are useful portfolio projects if someone wanted to apply for a backend role?
Cool. That's a really good question, Sarah, especially because when I was first learning, I was obsessed with like having tens of projects and like, trying all the fanciest new things to show that I could do X, Y, and Z. But I'd actually say that the best advice, at least that I could give, is to do one or two projects and do them well. Like follow best practices. So if you were going specifically for a back-end job, then fully build out a functional API. Make sure that you've tested every single step of the way. Potentially even write some documentation so that it's really easy for someone who's quickly looking over your GitHub or your CV to know exactly what you did. Don't worry too much about making sure that you tried the fanciest new things, like I'm going to do this using GraphQL, for example. Everyone's always talking about GraphQL. Just build one or two projects and make sure that it showcases all of the fundamentals, and you should be good to go.
Okay, great. Do you think in your portfolio projects you should show some form of practice, like the application of things like design patterns or test-driven development? Have those sort of things, do you think they would matter? Have they mattered?
For me, I think it kind of depends where you want to end up. Like test-driven development is kind of something that a lot of people actually disagree with sometimes. But you would probably say that you want to research where in the industry you want to be, what kind of company you want to work for, and have a look at their specs and see what it is that they're looking for, and maybe try to do a project after you've read that, rather than preemptively trying to make your project be all things for all people. And then also have a think about what you yourself want to do. If you're not really the kind of person who wants to be told you have to do it an X kind of way, and yet you're building it that way and applying for a job that does it that way, then maybe you kind of want to have a rethink.
Yeah, cool. Excellent points. It is a really, really wide world out there. So being able to cut down from knowing everything to just knowing a couple of things that are actually going to land you in the job that you want, that is spot on. Yeah, excellent. Cool stuff. And then a lot of folks enter the industry via a boot camp like you did. And we know that a lot of these boot camps are focused on full stack or even front end. If someone's in that position, knowing what you know now, how would you advise that person specifically to move, or what skills should they learn? Because they're not learning from scratch. What would you advise them to change so that they can move into a back-end role, given that they have front-end skills?
Front-end skills. I don't believe that any skills are wasted. And, you might actually be in a better position having front-end skills. Imagine you're being compared with another candidate who just has back-end and you have both. So I wouldn't necessarily say that your skills are wasted. If you, knowing what you know, want to specifically focus on the back-end, then make sure that your portfolio pieces highlight your back-end skills, I would say. And use your portfolio pieces to demonstrate your skills, but also still talk about your front end. And I would potentially even still use your front end skills in that portfolio project, just make it more heavily back end.
Okay. So the advice there is to keep your existing applications, but just build more examples into the back end.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually really, really nice, because it gives you a lot. That's quite a lot of experience in that, and understanding how all the pieces fit together is much more important than just knowing how the individual parts work.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say also that the things aren't so isolated, at least from my experience these days. It's not like you're going to be, it's unlikely that you'll be working for a company that will not have a front end team, or will not be using whatever you're building in the back end and attaching a front end to it. So if you have that skills and knowledge to know how your work is going to be used, I think that can't be anything but an asset.
Cool. Excellent. Great. So on that turn, we have our first quickfire round. So shake it up. So whatever comes to mind first, just blurt it out there. There are no wrong answers. Are you ready?
Yes.
Great stuff. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Country you'd love to visit but haven't gone to yet?
New Zealand.
And a country that you have been to so far that you really like?
Canada.
Nice. Town or village?
Town.
City person.
Yes.
What is your favorite meetup?
Oh, that is a good question. There's Meetup AI. I'm like really interested in AI at the minute, and they kind of tone it down for people who haven't got any idea really about the technicalities of it all. Okay. That's really interesting.
Cool. Very cool. Are you more of an early bird or night owl?
Night owl. Oh my God, I hate mornings.
Marmite, love or hate it?
Love it. Could eat it out of the pot.
Very nice. Very British. Silicon Valley or Silicon Roundabout?
Ooh, Silicon Roundabout.
Good. Food web or World Wide Web?
Food web.
Agreed. Are you a Kindle person or a physical book person?
Physical book person.
Yeah, especially a new book with that new book smell.
Yeah. I was just feel a bit smarter when I'm like on the tube and I got my nose in a book. Like,
oh, I see. No, good reason. Do you accept cookies or reject cookies?
Reject cookies.
Good answer. We work in security.
Yes.
What is your favorite meal to cook at home?
Chips, brunch. Like, actually, if I'm going to be particularly honest, Brenna, I call it breakfast for dinner, and I love it.
Oh, very good. Nice. And the final one, what is a product that you wish existed?
A wand. A magic wand.
What is the first thing you would do with that wand?
I would apparate. I would stop getting on planes and I would just apparate to the place that I want to be in. Very nice. Are you if you find a genie and they've got 3 wishes, and your first wish is for all the wishes? Yeah. Yep, yes, I see you. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Back into business. You mentioned that you attended a boot camp. A lot of people have to make a decision between self-learning and boot camps. How valuable was it for you? And do you think you could have learned the same content on your own, or was it better to have gone to classes? It's a really good question, especially because I was having those same questions for myself at the time, especially because I wasn't necessarily in a financial position to just say, cool, I'm going to take 3 months off and gamble and hopefully get a job after it. For me personally, like, I needed that time and that structure that the class provided. And really, that's kind of what I was paying for, because had I not been accountable to a lecturer, I would have spent that time working. Like, I know myself, I would not have been able to organize my day enough to say, I'm going to spend these 3 hours working and learning. If my manager had called me for a shift, I would have taken it, and then those 3 hours learning would have gone. So I really needed that structure, and I needed to be accountable to more than myself, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it. Saying that, it was expensive, and it was really hard doing that and juggling work. For me, it was worth it, 100% worth it. I wouldn't have been here if I had relied on self-learning. But I do know a few people who have done the self-learning route, and it's just taken them longer. And so if you're the kind of person who can dedicate that time, I don't think it's impossible. It was just impossible for me.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer, because it's not always the first thing that occurs to someone, I think, when looking at those things and evaluating the options. And having that accountability built in is really, really massive. Given what you do know now, that you've been working for a bit post your bootcamp, in terms of content, what would you suggest that they actually change that would make, or that would provide more information and be more related to the back end?
That's a really good question. I think what would I change? I think there was a lot of emphasis on testing, which was good. Like, so in my bootcamp, we used Mocha and Chai, and there was a lot of value placed on TDD and kind of like the process. But I don't know whether it was lack of time or just like lack of industry kind of knowledge. We were kind of just going through the motions. We didn't really kind of know why we were testing. We were just testing. Like,
okay,
there was like, you would see it, the kind of the whole process with TDD, right? Like, you write a test, watch it fail, do the work, watch it pass, and that kind of process. But there was no real importance as to be like, we need to make tests so that we can make changes to how this code is written, but these tests still pass, for example. Like, unless we're changing, obviously, the logic. There was no real kind of understanding as to how these tests make this product more robust in the long run. So I wouldn't really know how you would change that, but I guess maybe just like a deeper understanding of what we were doing this for might have been good.
Yes, I think that sounds like an excellent idea. I think with most practices, you want to be understanding why you're spending the time on them. Cool. Well, hopefully they watch this and think about making some changes there.
For sure. It's difficult to do, I suppose, because we were all just working on like many little isolated projects. Like, I was doing, to-do apps, for example. And then when you're doing those, you're not really thinking about like, oh, like somebody could mess this up, or I could mess this up in the future if this isn't tested correctly.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I don't think it's easy, but maybe looking at some more realistic applications. Which sounds useful in general, if you ask me. But yeah, okay, cool, very good. Not that it held anybody back. Right, and then something that crops up a lot as well with back-end jobs is the focus on data structures and algorithms. How relevant has that been for you getting a role, for it being more focused on the back end? And I'd like to know if it's something that you felt was also a gap. Had you covered it already? Has it cropped up?
It was a gap. I knew very, very little about algorithms other than just personal interest in looking into it and seeing. There was a time I kind of flirted with data science, so I was having a look at how that would be relevant, but it didn't hold me back not knowing anything about that. I wasn't asked about it in my interview process. It wasn't a part of my coding challenge for the interview process, and haven't really come up against anything like that now. So I think that so for the algorithms wise, like for me anyway, haven't had any sort of relevance whatsoever.
Cool. Great. I think it does come up a lot, and it can be a stumbling block, but it's nice to see that it isn't always the case, because that's quite a lot of content, and it doesn't mean that you can't add value to a company until you've learned that stuff. So.
For sure. And I think that hopefully when the time comes that I do need it, I think the key is to be honest, right? When I was in my interview, I was very honest about my experience and what I did know, what I didn't know, what I was keen to learn. So I think if it does come up, I believe that my team would give me the space to practice and read into it before actually picking up any tickets about it.
Oh, that's amazing. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
So chuffed. That's great. Cool. And you mentioned GraphQL earlier. It is quite a hot topic at the moment. Could you talk to a little bit about what it actually is, and whether you would suggest someone adding it into their toolkit right now or not?
Cool. So, I'm assuming that you all know about RESTful APIs because you're here in a backend engineering talk. So GraphQL basically turns the traditional structure of RESTful APIs on its head. So where before you potentially be creating endpoints that send back payloads of data that, for example, includes a title, a name, an age, a place of birth. But somebody who is making requests to that endpoint might not necessarily care about a lot of what's being sent, other than maybe the title and the place of birth, for example. So GraphQL allows you to request specifically the information that you need, rather than getting a whole load back from an endpoint and having to maybe do some refactoring to get what you need out of the data. So it was made by Facebook, and some people have issues with that. And I would say it would really depend on your journey. So, for example, when I was just starting out, I think that GraphQL would have gone completely over my head. And to be honest, I don't think that you can fully appreciate how much of a difference, how game-changing it is, without fully really understanding RESTful APIs and having an experience with that and building that. So if you haven't done that, I would not touch GraphQL. If you have, and you're interested, it's quite easy to pick up. The documentation is great. And you could potentially try building a GraphQL version of a RESTful API that you've already made. That would make the jump quite a bit easier. I wouldn't say that it's necessary. Like, don't feel that you need to learn it to be able to get a backend job. It's definitely not, 99% of backend is still using the traditional ways. But it's really interesting. And I've seen actually myself a few jobs that have advertised that they're using GraphQL, and if it's something that you want to go into, or if it's a company that you see is using it, then I'd give it a go.
Okay, perfect. So out of that, I got, if you already have experience with REST APIs, then this is a great way to sort of bolster maybe a tool in your toolkit. Probably give you some architectural options, but it's not a game stopper.
No, not at all.
Great. Good to know. I think there's so much tech out there that it's really difficult to know what you really need to know and what you don't really actually need to know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you're spot on. The underlying theme of it really depends where you want to work is really, really important, because otherwise you could learn all the things forever but
Exactly.
not quite match a role for any company,
Yeah,
because they need particular things, they're looking for particular things.
for sure.
So that's really, really, really interesting. Great, thank you very much for that. In terms of learning all these tools, and you've obviously learned quite a lot, taking that back to the teaching that you did, do you find that your experience teaching other people helped you learn how to code more quickly than if you hadn't been teaching?
Oh yeah, definitely. And what's funny is that like I was also like, so we got given katas every day to work through as a student. And when I was teaching, I would like be like, oh wow, actually know the answer to this now. Like, you know, you're getting kind of information back slowly that you didn't fully know the first time round.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Repetition.
teaching was a great way to further my own knowledge, to be perfectly honest. I wouldn't have traded it for the world. And it really helped kind of cement some information that I either completely missed or like didn't fully understand.
No, perfect. Yeah, repetition of that data and teaching someone else really, really, really helps solidify that. So that's great. Cool stuff. I wanted to ask a little bit about, you have a particular journey with the tools that you used, but there are obviously multiple different ecosystems through which one can come into coding.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the tools that you used, being Node.js and sort of that kind of ecosystem, would you recommend any other ecosystem that you think is beginner friendly for those wanting to go into the back end but don't want to do JavaScript and TypeScript?
I'll be honest, I am only just starting to learn things that aren't Node.js based. So I've recently picked up Python, just like out of general interest, really, to see what it's all about. And I'm a massive gamer, so I'm looking into C# to like do some stuff with that. And so I couldn't honestly recommend anything backend wise that's not JavaScript, because it's all I've ever really experienced. But I'd say again, just like look into the companies that interest you, look at their job specs and see what they use. And if it's something that interests you, see how you can use it. I would highly recommend Treehouse. It's a competitor to Code Academy, and their tutorials follow specific tracks, and they're a lot more interactive. Like you're taught something, you're given quizzes and questions, but also code to write. And I very much preferred it to Code Academy when I was first learning. So if anybody wants to have a look at other back-end engineering tracks and what they can use that's not JavaScript, have a look at Treehouse.
Awesome, thank you. And on that note, we will be sending out a list of resources that Felicia's kindly put together for us. So make sure that your emails are functioning after this meetup. They will also be attached to the video. So keep an eye out for those. I wanted to ask maybe a little bit more of a tricky question, so you can choose to decline. But what has been one of the more challenging tasks that you've completed at work, and how did you get through it? What did you learn from it?
I wouldn't necessarily say it was a task, but it was more just like asking for help. And that sounds so ridiculous, but it was still really hard. Like I had never worked in such a fast-paced environment before, and I still felt quite shy about my abilities, especially since I am the only junior on my team. So in the beginning, I kind of suffered in silence, like, and they were really ridiculous, small questions. But like, and because they were small questions, I felt really shy and anxious about asking them and interrupting my teammates because they all had their things going on, and I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing and they made a massive mistake in hiring me. So I just kind of kept silent, and like, I get told off in a jokey way by my manager all the time. He was just like, you're new, right? Like,
yeah,
we don't expect you to know everything. And even when you're not new, like, the only way you're going to learn is if you ask questions. And I'm trying to drum that into my head, but it's hard to get over, like, the insecurities that you had.
Oh no, for sure. Yeah, tell me if you get it right. I don't know if that ever really goes away. But I'm glad that they came through for you at the end. Yeah, no, excellent. And talking about these sorts of challenges, have you made use of a mentor at all, or not, and whether they've been inside of work or outside of work?
So inside of work, I'd say I have a couple of mentors, and if they watch this, then they're going to be like, I'm your mentor. But they've definitely felt like mentors to me. My team lead has been absolutely incredible, and like also in takes time out of the week for my own personal development. So like, I get some time that's not anything really to do with work that I can learn and grow, and that has been invaluable. And like, I ask him like questions and we talk about it, and I was not expecting that because obviously like I'm being paid to do a job, but like that has been incredible, and he's been great. And one of my seniors as well, he actually started after me but has just been instrumental in like supporting me. And like, he similarly didn't study computer science and didn't actually go for a boot camp. He was self-taught, so he knows kind of what I'm going through, and he's been absolutely grand. In terms of having a mentor outside of work, I'm signed up to something called the Mentoring Network, which I've posted in the resources. It's a free kind of platform for you to poke mentors who post themselves on there, and you schedule like an hour Zoom and you can speak to them about professional development or like, personal goals. And it's been really cool, actually. Also, just to like see that other people have gone through what I've gone through and come out the other side. Like, I know it's stupid, like, but also it's nice to know that these like feelings are not abnormal, like everybody has like troubles, and everybody's also balancing like wanting to grow professionally and also have a social life and dealing with family. And sometimes it's nice to just go through with that with someone. So I definitely recommend having a mentor.
Yeah, amazing. I don't know what it is with humans. We always think we're the only people going through things. Yeah. When most of the time, 99% of the population understands exactly how you feel.
Yep.
Cool, that's amazing. And then talking a little bit about your progression and learning more. Do you have a plan? Obviously, you've entered your career, but ultimately, I assume you'd want to grow and get better. Do you have a plan or a vision for how you will get to that senior dev role?
I do not. And it's interesting that you asked me that, because my product manager asked me a similar question the other day, and I said the exact same thing. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there, but I'm trying to kind of measure my progress. So every time I have a task, I've kept like kind of a diary about what my task was, what the end goal was, and what I did to get there. And in the beginning, like even just a few months ago when I started, I would write pages and pages. And when I would get stuck, I'd like write what I got stuck about and why I got stuck. And even now, like a few months later, I find myself writing less and less about, because I guess I know what I'm doing.
Well, that's a good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to measure myself that way, and hopefully with that, and in combination with the one-to-ones that I have with my team lead, we can kind of push it together and go along a path that can hopefully eventually lead to progression. But at the minute, since I'm just starting, I'm just really just trying to focus on, okay, cool, I have less stuff that I'm worried about now. That means I'm making progress.
That's great. I think that's really amazing. I think we put a lot of focus on becoming senior, becoming lead, and there's really no rush. You still have to work for a very long time, and you may as well enjoy the ride. So yeah. I think that's a perfect answer. Great. So it is time for round 2 of our quickfire round. So move those shoulders, get some blood flowing, and same as last time, whatever comes to mind first. Cool. All right. Mac or PC?
Mac.
Okay, we answered this one earlier. Visual Studio Code or WebStorm?
WebStorm.
Team WebStorm. What is your favorite app?
Oh my God, what is my favorite app? Instagram. Sorry, I'm a millennial.
No problem. We're not going to invite you back. No, I'm just kidding. Are you a mouse person or a trackpad person?
A mouse person.
APIs or SQL?
Oh, APIs all the way.
What is the best book that you have read recently? It can be technical or non-technical.
Okay, it's my favorite book, and it's called Shadow of the Wind.
What's it about?
It's kind of magical realism, and it's about this boy in Barcelona in the 50s, and he discovers that his father works for a magical bookshop.
That sounds awesome. Very cool. That needs to be in your references list later. Are you a music while working person or not?
I am a TV whilst working person.
Oh, wow. Amazing. What do you watch?
Like reruns of things I've seen a million times.
Oh, fascinating. I do something very similar. It's very cool. Very cool. What is your favorite meal to take away?
Sushi.
Sushi. How much sushi had you had over lockdown?
Oh, you don't want to know. This is like the most expensive takeaway.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I can at least fit through the door, which is the measurement I'm going for right now.
Yeah, 100%. We might us, not the other way around.
Yeah. What is the weirdest requirement you have seen on a job ad?
Oh my God.
Given that you've probably had to look through a few of them, as we all do, because they're all so different.
I can actually say, and I hope that other people can, when they say that it's a junior position, but then want like 4 to 5 years experience. How is that a junior position? Can somebody tell me that, please?
That is, I think we should get t-shirts that say that. That's a real problem. Great stuff. And then final one, what is some of the best advice that you've been given that you'd like to share with us?
Ooh. Best advice that I've been given. I think that it would be to like this is, I don't know if it's necessarily advice, and I'm trying to think of something that other people may not already have said, but like be honest about your mistakes. And I'll give you an example. Like when my first like few months, I was struggling with a ticket that I had, and I was asking, I asked one other teammate. I probably should have asked more than one other teammate, but I asked one other teammate, and he was like, I also don't really know how to do this. And like, we can't test whether this works in the test environment. Let's deploy to dev and see if it works there, which was like a mistake because it was broken. And then now it was deployed to dev, which probably means that it's ultimately going to be deployed to production. And I was able to revert it. But when I was speaking to my team lead about it, we were like kind of breaking down what happened, he was kind of just like, it's good that you owned up to like making the mistake of kind of only speaking to one person about it and taking their word for gospel. But we could have done X, Y, and Z, and we could have fixed it. And it kind of goes back again to not wanting to seem stupid and not wanting to ask loads of questions, even though I was stuck. But I think it's just kind of be honest and be open and own your mistakes. Like if you've got so far that you've landed a position, or even you've landed an interview and you're doing the code review, it means that they like you, and that it means that they see something in you. And no one's perfect. So I think that just being honest about what you do and don't know, and then when you do think you know something and you got it wrong, should hopefully give us all like kind of a good road to walk on.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying your stories. I feel like you live in a theme that I try and promote, which is that we are not, our current knowledge isn't representative of our capability. And you seem to be living this life, and it really, really makes me happy.
I'm trying.
Yeah, no, that's great. Cool stuff. So we are on our final section. I wanted to ask, in terms of backend development, have there been any sort of stereotypes or commonly held beliefs that, as you've been doing this role, you found to be not true, or anything that you expected it to be that it wasn't?
So I kind of expected that when I like own a feature, when I take charge of kind of building the thing that I've been tasked with building with, that it would be my job to continue to maintain that, and to watch it, and to, like, if it needs changing, to be that person to change it. And I guess in the beginning as well, like, because it was like my little baby, like, oh my God, this is the first thing that I did. Like, I want to keep it. Like, I want to like watch it grow and evolve. And it's the complete opposite. Like, at least in my experience right now, like, you ship that code, it is gone. Like, fair enough, your team might potentially own the files or own that piece of code, but other people can do almost kind of whatever they want with it. If it's in their roadmap. That's not what I was expecting at all. And I was a little bit sad about it. And then I obviously realized, like, hey, they're using a thing that I built. This is amazing. But in the beginning, it was kind of like you want to like take possession of it and like just do everything. But it's not possible. You can't do everything. There's too much to do.
There is too much to do. And yeah, spot on. You made something usable that other people have used. And there's no better stamp of being a great dev. So that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing would be kind of what we've been talking about this whole time, right? That it's not just back end that I'm doing, it's also front end that I'm doing. I'm also doing some DevOps, and it's great because I'm like learning so much stuff. But I didn't know that I would be.
Yeah, good point. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. And what are you excited to work on next?
What am I doing next? So we've got like a massive feature at the minute. And I'm working really closely with the feature lead on that. And I've never kind of done that before. Up until now, it's been kind of fixing bugs and doing like onboarding tasks to get to know the code base. And now I'm like kind of have my teeth in like a massive feature that our whole team is working on, rather than just like me doing something. So that's been really exciting.
Oh, awesome. Great. That's all I have. Is there any last pieces of advice, information that you would like to share with people who are just about to start the journey that you started just a short while ago?
Yeah, I'd say don't let your fear stop you. Like, there are so many times where it's actually funny. I applied to this boot camp, and kept putting off my interview to go. And I didn't actually join until like 6 months later because I was so scared. I was like, I can't do this. I can't turn my whole life around. Like, I can't just decide I want to be a software developer. People don't do that. Like, that's just not a thing. And I
It's
just...
a thing.
It's a thing. Just don't be frightened. And I'd say don't be frightened by starting the journey. Don't be frightened by applying to jobs. Same thing. I knew that I was ready to move on and grow and apply for a new job a few months before I actually had the courage to do it. And, you know, I landed on my feet, thankfully, but what if I hadn't? What if I had missed some opportunities because I was so scared? I was so focused on churning out those portfolio pieces, and it's not the most important thing having like numerous half done like portfolio pieces. And so I just say, if you want to do it, just close your eyes and do it, and like give it your all, and you can't go wrong.
Amazing. Well, on that note, thank you so much for spending your evening with us and sharing your stories,
Thanks for having
your
me.
lessons, your passion. Yeah, no, really, really inspiring. Thank you so very much.
Thanks for listening.
Awesome. So thank you everybody for coming. I hope that you enjoyed that and that was useful to you. And if anything, you're left feeling as inspired as I am.